record. Okay, sorry I forgot to press record sooner, but we'll try and capture most of the presentation at any rate. Thank you. Keep going.
I can go back in at the end and catch those slides if you want. So, all right, so we'll back to, so another source of heat. You know, we've talked about the mechanical, we've talked about a chemical, electrical. So electrical, and here's some pictures, overloading extension cords. We're coming into the holidays where we use a lot of extension cords. Again, we want to make sure we're not overloaded. The presentation about options to use, but something that has a breaker on it to help the electricity be stopped if we do have an overheating situation. You can see the overload there that often happens. You know, extension cords are not meant as permanent wiring options. You should have those actually installed by an electrician, a permanent source of electricity, not leaving a permanent source being an extension cord. That's a temporary use that can be watched and made sure that we don't get the damage that's shown up in that top right corner to happen. And then, oops, let me take my video off. It's saying my connection is unstable. There we go. So the electrical, static electricity, that's the CZU fire. So that's actually like your lightning strikes. Arc welding, they're showing in the other one. That's, again, a cause of spark coming from an electrical source. Next slide here. Can you hear me, Ann? Next slide. Oh, okay. So fire growth. So we've already had the ignition sources. Now let's talk about growth. So in this case, it's showing the fire started on the couch. And as that starts to burn, you can see how the heat rises and so do the gases. That's why they always say crawl low under smoke. If that's not detected early and that door is open, it continues to feed air and oxygen to that fire. So you'll continue to have unchecked growth in that, unless you had sprinklers installed that would put that fire out. So if you don't have residential sprinklers, this is going to continue to burn as long as it continues to have air in that triangle and fuel in that triangle. We have that sustained chemical reaction going on there. And you can see how the development of the gases get more and more at the top of the ceiling, and the heat and the cooler air will be down low. Next slide. So a fully developed fire, again, we had the door wide open, so it continued to give it air and it gave it a place to travel to. And it actually travels along those superheated gases. So you see it coming out and it's traveling on those superheated gases and heating the environment as it goes along, as it continues to burn in that room. Eventually it will get into a flashover stage, which we'll talk about in a second. As long as this has ventilation and fuel, it'll continue to burn. We haven't broken that triangle. Next slide. So again, we're talking about a flashover. So just pre-flashover, there's an equal mix of heat in the room. So the whole room is ready to ignite. When you hit that temperature, and usually it's in excess of 900 degrees, everything in the room is giving off gas. When you look at a flame of fire, when you look, there's an actual space between the wick and the flame, and that's actually the gases that are burning. So that's what's happening. Everything in the room is giving off gases, and now the whole room is going to catch on fire, and it's called a flashover. Next slide. So we have a video. I don't know, Ann, can you get that up quick enough, or is that we can look at it later?
Let me give it a try. Hang on a second.
I'm going to talk about decay while you work on that. I
Okay.
can see the decay slide. You can just work on the flashover video. And so fire decay is when all the product is consumed and most of the available oxygen or fuel is gone. So the fire diminishes, the temperatures cool down, and then smoke or unburned, all that's left is smoke and unburned products of combustion that are left in the room or whatever area it's in. Sorry, we have another one queued up for later. I should have had us queue this one up. I apologize. So this is where we get a lot of our information, but this will show you a great flashover since we do have Christmas coming up. This is a live tree in this video. And watch the seconds that it takes for this thing to completely get going, this is obviously a dry tree with an ignition source. That's our fuel. You see that billowing of smoke and hot gases along the ceiling. They obviously have oxygen flowing in this room. It's now spreading with radiant heat to the surrounding, with direct flame impingement and radiant heat to the surrounding areas until all the gases in the room is heating to the 900 degrees. All of the gases are starting to come off, and we'll get the flashover here in a second. All the dark smoke. And there you go. So with less than a minute, that was all the dark smoke. That was when the flashover happens. So again, Christmas trees, Christmas coming up. They build these little rooms at the. Oh, here's.
You want to see that one, or should I stop?
This is the one that actually had water. It takes longer because it was a healthier tree, and that's a great demonstration to talk about live. So we can go ahead and go back to the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Poor Ann's having to do. She said she had the easy part. It's not.
Comparatively, I do. I just have to press more buttons. Okay, here we go.
You're awesome. Thanks, Ann. So again, fire decay, that's when the fire's basically out. It's run out of fuel, or it's just smoldering at this point, but basically it's consumed everything that's available. It's still a very dangerous situation. A lot of carcinogenic materials are around in that soot and unburned products. So that's why we, as firefighters, continue to wear a breathing apparatus on what we call overhaul. So when we're going and looking for the cause and what the origin of the fire was. Next slide. You didn't know you were going to get so much fire science tonight, did you?
Okay.
So that ends the fire science portion. Do we have any questions right now, Ann, about, let me look at the questions while you set up for the next portion of the kind of safety.
You want to do the extinguisher next, right?
Yeah, we will make the presentation available. Obviously, we didn't record the very beginning. That was the question. What we have recorded, we will, we'll just go to the other PowerPoint.
Okay.
This one's the one that's embedded in the other PowerPoint. So slide 34.
Yeah, let's see.
I'm kind of working off 2 decks of PowerPoints here to.
Alrighty.
So we talked about fire science and how fire exists, becomes fire. Now we're going to talk a little bit of the more common sense things, because I want to throw in, again, it's not really CERT, but it's preparedness. The fire science component, like I said, I wish we were getting to do actual fire pits and the extinguishers, but we'll make sure we plan that in when we can do that type of activity again, and we'll get a real fun, impressive night going. So cooking fires are the #1 cause of house fires. Here's some prevention tips. Turn the handles inwards. Don't leave cooking unattended. You can bring a mitt with you when you go walk around in the house if you have something on the stove, if you do have to get distracted from something cooking, so that you have that in your hand to remind you that you do have something cooking. Make sure as you're, as the long sleeves are coming out with the colder weather, that you're not giving, again, a fuel over a burner to catch fire, being your clothes. So make sure you don't have loose fitting clothes, and then obviously grease for starting fires and burns. The timer is there to say you can actually set timer to and carry it with you, because you may not hear it. That's why they have one that's a portable one rather than just the one on the stove. So again, if you do have to walk away, that you'll remember that you have something cooking, because pot on the stove is a very common call that we get, or people will actually leave sometimes, forget that they have something cooking. Next slide.
Sure. And one of the things that you've taught me is, if I leave the room, take something with me, the pot lid or the hot mitt, so that when I get in the other room and I've gotten distracted, I'll say, why the heck do I have this hot mitt? Oh no, I left it in the other room.
Yeah, and that's the also taking that timer or the mitt or the spoon, a wooden spoon, but carry it with you. Don't put it down, and that'll remind you, you know, again, to why do I have this in my hand? And you'll remember, because I've done it more than a couple of times. Fortunately, it's usually just water boiling in the teapot, but yeah, even the firefighter, a retired firefighter does it. So again, I kind of talked about the lid on the pot earlier when I was discussing the fire triangle. sometimes, you know, Grandma used to say, there's a lid for every pot. They don't always fit well, but, you know, there is a lid for every pot. One of the things that we recommend is keeping a cookie sheet close to the stove. Then you don't have to worry whether or not that lid fits. You can just take that cookie sheet, stay a little bit away from that fire and slide it across, and you still have the effect of removing the oxygen by covering it with the cookie sheet. And you can do it either way. It's a little bit easier than trying to get in there and put that lid on that pot if it's a like say a grease fire that's splattering. Again, if it's ever too big to deal with, just leave, call 911, and don't go back in once you leave, because again, those toxic gases are developing, and some people get confused when they start getting hypoxic or a loss of oxygen, and they forget what to do and how to get out. So important points again, don't ever put water, especially on a grease fire. Cover it is the best option. And then a lot of people will try to carry it over to the sink. And a lot of times they end up catching other things on fire, if not themselves or clothes, or burning themselves because it splashes on them. And whenever you have a fire on the stove, even if you are able to put it out, if it's gone for any period of time, make sure you call 911. We can come out with a thermal imaging camera and make sure you didn't have any extension, which will be burning into either your vent over your stove or the back walls, depending on where the pot or the fire was located. So especially if we have any charring, definitely have 911 come out and take a look, just to be on the safe side. We don't mind at all. Next slide. So we talked a little bit about sources of heat that can start fires. Here's a typical overloaded socket. Again, this happens a lot of times around the holidays. Make sure that you don't overload them. The bottom picture talking about space heaters, supposed to keep them about 3 feet away. Again, they can tip over, catch other objects on fire. We talked about the radiant heat component or direct flame impingement. That's kind of what's happening if that blanket touches that heater. Make sure you don't store anything on those in case they get turned on, possibly. Don't store any combustibles on top of a heater. And then make sure you don't put the rugs over the electrical cords, because they can actually cause damage that you don't know about. Now you've put an ignition source on top of that electrical cord. Make sure that this is a place where getting your money's worth, you get what you pay. Make sure that you use a UL listed any type of electrical products. Those have been tested in the underwriter's laboratory. And one of the best things I can tell people to do, a lot of people just put surge protectors. Those are those bars with the multiple places to plug in. That's a better option than this picture up on the left. The thing, again, you want to make sure that it has been UL listed. And you want to make sure that you don't daisy chain them, which is plug one into another, because that's kind of overriding its safety component. But the thing that's in there is a breaker fuse. You want to make sure that you get one with a breaker fuse. Occasionally they're just extension cords and they're not surge protectors. So make sure it has a surge protector, which has a fuse in it. And then that way, a lot of people think, oh, it protects my electronic equipment, but it works the opposite way. If the electronic equipment gets hot, it breaks there instead of traveling up the wall to the breaker in the box. The breaker in the box still may flip too if the breaker on the surge protector flips. But the idea is to stop it at a place before the box outside. Now, if you have breakers that flip all the time and you have somebody that one of your kids actually knows how to go turn it back on, that's something you want to get looked at by an electrician. You have something going on that's overloading. If you have a breaker that's flipping in your electrical box frequently, you have too much amperage on that circuit. Again, watch for fraying cords. We saw that in that beginning slide. That's a place for electrocution possibility or for fires to start from an ungrounded cord. And then replace your furnace filters annually. So we're starting to turn our heaters on. You get a lot of dust and debris, and again, that can be a combustible item. So you want to make sure that you change your filters for your heaters here now, you know, when we're starting in early into the winter and the cold season. Next slide. So I saw a question about carbon monoxide. We're going to talk about that with the smoke alarms and carbon monoxide here in the next couple of slides. Most fatal fires happen when people are asleep because the component that we have with carbon monoxide. You can't see it. It's odorless, colorless, and it mixes readily with air. So the smoke alarm, the best place to have that is on the ceiling or up high on the wall. You should have one on every floor of your house in the common area, so the hallway, and every room that someone sleeps in. So if someone's sleeping in the living room, yes, you should have one in the living room. If someone's sleeping, whatever bedrooms people are sleeping in, the one thing you want to make sure is that you don't have it too close to where you cook, or if there's a shower, the steam will also. So sometimes I had a house where it was in the, it kind of had a big vaulted ceiling, and it would come out of the bathroom and go up the wall. So it would set off the smoke alarm from the steam. So again, that's positional. I would recommend, if that's happening with the steam, to move that to another wall. Watch where the steam comes out and move it to a wall that it's not going to do that. Same with if you set it off every time from cooking, it's probably a little too close to the kitchen, and you may want to consider relocating it if there's a good spot to relocate where you can still have the coverage in that room. So maintenance, this has changed over the years. It used to be that we had to replace the battery every year. If you buy a new smoke alarm now, they will only have 10-year batteries in them, unless you find an old one somewhere in your closet or something. But the ones you buy in the store now are 10 years, so you don't have to do the annual battery replacement. If you do have an older version, you still need to replace that battery annually. You should be testing your smoke alarm once a month, and if you look at the smoke alarm, there's a test button. If you can't reach it, you can use a broom or something, and you should test that. And then your smoke alarms, really the shelf life on them is about 10 years. So I recommend when you install new ones to take a Sharpie pen, and on the bottom side, before you attach it to the ceiling, put the date, the month and the year, so that if it starts to go bad, you can kind of tell how long you've actually had it up. Next slide. We'll talk a little bit about carbon monoxide in this one. So like I said already, the carbon monoxide was one of those components of the combustion from the fire of what's in the gases. It's now required by law to have a carbon monoxide monitor. These can be plugged in or hardwired. And the thing I said about the carbon monoxide, it's about the same weight as air, so it mixes readily. So they can be plugged in low in an outlet, but you should have it away from the heater where the heater blows out. You want to have it a few feet away from that at least. I know sometimes there's not a lot of choice in where your outlets are, but ideally it's not right next to the where the heat comes out, because there might be small amounts of carbon monoxide, not enough to set off the alarm. Again, you can also have these in combination with a smoke alarm, and that would be, if that's the case, you'd want that up high for the smoke component. It'll still work the same because it mixes readily in the air. And then you need it on every level of the home. A common area, usually a hallway, is the most recommended. It does not have to be in every room. If someone is using the garage to work out, I would recommend putting it out in the garage also, or if your garage is converted into sleeping area, you should have a smoke alarm and a carbon monoxide alarm out in the garage. Next slide. So this is kind of a common all risk concept that we start really young with kids. No two ways out of the house. Again, this is all dealing with fire and you know, what we do if there's a fire, checking the door. Remember, use the back of our hands because you don't want to burn the palm of your hand. So you check the back of the door to see if it's hot. We teach this in knowing two ways out of everywhere. We've converted it into, or adapted it to terrorism in knowing two ways out of buildings if there's an active shooter. So that two ways out is applicable to everything in life. It's something that, as a prepared person, we always want to be thinking. But in the home, again, if you have young children that are going to need to exit from an upstairs window, you want to make sure if you're using a ladder like that, you practice it, teach them how to get the screen off and actually do the ladder, so that, you know, the middle of the night and the smoke and the scared, that's not the time you want them to learn how to use that ladder and how to open windows. Have them do a dry run. Don't want to scare them. We want to prepare them. Talk about a meeting place. Talk about calling 911, grandkids, when they come over to your house. Make sure that they're ready for that home escape fire plan too. Next slide. So fire extinguishers, these are the types of fire extinguishers, and you can kind of see this goes in line with what we've talked about a little bit of what a combustible is. we're talking about ordinary combustibles and a type A extinguisher, and that's kind of your, anything that'll kind of normally burn. If you held a match to it and it'll burn, that's kind of an ordinary combustible. Flammable liquids, and that's when we get into our gasolines and our oils, solvents. I talked about the linseed oil, how it can spontaneously combust. Again, this is considered a B class when you look at fire extinguisher types. C class is energized electrical equipment. What we have in most of the time in electrical fire, if we are able to shut off, that's why it's so important that we know where the breakers are in our home. Once we shut off the electricity, then we'll have just a type A fire, a normal combustible. So whatever the electrical source caught on fire, say it's the rug going over the damaged cord and the rug's on fire, that's what we'll be putting out at that point. And that'll change from a C fire to an A fire. A K fire is a little bit newer in the world of extinguishers, and you'll see this only in commercial kitchens. It's where there's deep fat fryer vats or large amounts of oil. It's specifically for cooking oils. And you can look on the side of your extinguisher for the type and rating of it. Once we get back on video, I have an extinguisher and we can take a quick little break if you want to grab an extinguisher if you have one in your house. We'll talk a little bit. I'll show you what I have. I have a teeny little baby one, but it has all these types of emblems on it to tell me what it will do for size is rating. So it's type and rating of size that they have on that extinguisher label. Next slide. How are we doing on
When
time?
detected early, portable fire extinguishers can put out small fires, saving lives and property.
Okay, so for this video, we're going to talk about using a fire extinguisher, and there's an acronym called PASS. And so the PASS in that is going to be discussed here in the extinguisher, and the acronym is for pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. And he'll be talking about that. There's that fire pit I wish we were using tonight with some actual extinguishers, maybe next year. So Ann, go ahead and play the how to operate a fire extinguisher.
There are 4 common classes of fire. Class A, ordinary combustibles, wood, paper, dry vegetation. Class B, flammable liquids, oils, gasoline, solvents. Class C, energized electrical equipment, motors, transformers, appliances. Class K, commercial cooking, deep fryer, animal and vegetable oils. Portable fire extinguishers are labeled according to the class of fire they can put out. Check the label and become familiar with the type of portable fire extinguishers in your home and workplace. To operate a portable fire extinguisher, remember the acronym PASS. PASS. Pull the pin. Aim the extinguisher. Squeeze the handle. Sweep side to side. When you need to use an extinguisher, first pull the pin. Pull the pin to unlock the operating lever. Then aim the extinguisher. Aim the nozzle or handle at the base of the fire. Next, squeeze the handle. Squeeze the handle to discharge the extinguisher. And finally, sweep side to side. Keep the extinguisher aimed at the base of the fire and sweep side to side. If you are unsure you can put the fire out, evacuate the area immediately and call 911. Keep in mind the following safety precautions if attempting to extinguish a fire. Be sure you have the correct fire extinguisher for the type of fire and know how to use it. Remember, portable fire extinguishers can only put out a small fire. If you decide to fight the fire, maintain a safe escape route in case the fire gets out of control. Have a backup person standing by whenever possible in case assistance is needed. Stop and leave the area immediately if you experience any physical problems, such as dizziness or difficulty breathing. Even if you think the fire is out, call the fire department to inspect the area. A fire can reignite or smolder where it cannot be seen. This safety video was brought to you by the Santa Clara County Fire Department. For more information, visit www.sccfd.org.
All right, so some good points were brought up in that. As we talked about in the beginning, about the size of a trash can is about a safe fire to think about fighting. Obviously, if you don't feel comfortable with that, exiting the building is always the best option, calling 911 once you're safely outside. Again, always maintain an exit route. We talked that 2 ways out. Always maintain that in case something happens, you're not paying attention, there's a secondary fire somewhere else that you didn't notice, or you pushed somewhere else. So again, some really good points in that. And the acronym again was PASS. So it's pull the pin, aim, squeeze, whatever type of trigger you have. That's why you want to look at your fire extinguisher, and then sweep. And you want to go at the base of the fire. So again, like I talked about the candle and the wick, right at the base of where the flame is on the wick, that's what you want to do when you're fighting the fire. So if it's a trash can, at the base, not the top of the flames, but at the base is where you want to aim. Next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit, even though, you know, we always say in CERT that anything hazardous materials is a no-go. But we'll go ahead and talk a little bit just to give you some categories of types of hazardous materials. Again, we've talked a lot already about flammable, and anything that can ignite is flammable. And you actually have the identifier as flammable, and things that are highly flammable, like a lot of the oils and gases. Corrosive is more of where there's a vapor or a chemical that can touch your skin and damage like body tissues, or, you know, cause corrosion to surfaces. Toxic is more of what you would consider inhaled. So generally it's in a gas form, because it's coming off a chlorine gas can be toxic if you inhale that. And then explosive or reactive. So it can, from shock wave, from an ignition source, or even water is something can become reactive or explosive. So these are the general categories in hazmat. Next slide. And if you look on items in your house, you'll see that are toxic, the things that are probably in your garage, not so much in your house. But if you look on the labels, you'll see some of those identifiers. You'll see some of those identifiers on items like drain cleaner and things like that you may have under the sink. And again, remember to have those secured, because they are, you know, obviously poisonous. There's hazardous material. If you look on a building and you see a placard like this, this is what we have to tell us as firefighters of what's going on. And this is for commercial occupancies. Generally, they have some kind of manufacturing, or they store gases or products. Even like a pool company has a lot of acids and chlorines, which mixed together can be highly toxic and can render you dead very quickly. So anyhow, this is kind of what's going on in those categories. The maximum number is 4. So this is just showing on a placard where those numbers would be located. The bottom one saying it's water reactive, so don't put water on it. But again, this is nothing you need to retain. I just kind of wanted to kind of show you what some of the details that we're looking at. And this is called the NFPA placard, 704 placarding. So next slide.
Okay, and I'd just like to throw in, you know, I was doing some cleaning in my garage, and I thought, gosh, I have bleach stored above my eyes. I live in earthquake country.
Yes.
That's not very smart. So I found a place on a lower shelf to move that to. And then the other thought I had is, I have bleach and ammonia in the same closet, and I live in an earthquake country. And if those were to tip over and to open and to combine, that would be a deadly combination.
Or catch on fire and combine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so that's one of the most hazardous places that we have. Yeah, and the fires is oftentimes out in people's garages, you know, because can be, you know, under the sink. But hopefully, the big thing with, again, it's a stop for us in hazmat, but the thing is quantity. You know, we want to store as little of this as possible. Try to use it up and get rid of it.
And be aware of what you have and where you stored it, because we do live in earthquake country. So.
We do. And like Anna said, lower is better, and the less amount is better, and the lowest areas, and preferably not to store things together that when they mix together are extremely hazardous. And look at the bottles and stuff, because sometimes they start to rust through some of the bottles, and now the container has failed, and you have some old sulfur product or something, and the container's failing, and it mixes with, you can There was a big thing that used to happen, or it was a kind of a trend that was started mostly out of China. And it did come over to the United States a little bit, but it was a suicide. And all they did was mix the chemicals in a bucket in the front seat of a car, and they keep the windows up. But they were mixing simple things that you can get. Sulfur that's on all types of things for plants outside. You treat them for like fruit trees. So you can take that sulfur product, and then you take an acid. So just a pull chemical and put it in a bucket together. And that causes a sulfur gas that comes off that is an asphyxiant, and you'll be dead in a couple minutes. Not a pleasant death, but that was kind of unfortunately a popular suicide that was going on probably about 5 or 6 years ago. So again, that can happen in your garage after an earthquake or a fire also. Let's see what we have for the next one on hazardous materials. So this I just wanted to show you because this is what you might see going down the freeway. Okay, they put these on the sides of vehicles. So if you have an ERG book, one of the orange covered books that we've taken out at hazmat classes sometimes before, that'll actually tell you if you want to really geek out, you can get one of those. It's a DOT book that they produce, and you can geek out and find out what those things are, because they all these numbers on that, you'll see other numbers on the like gasoline, you'll see a number on there, and you can look it up and find out what's in that, what's traveling next to you on the road in that big tanker truck. But these are the types of indicators. We talked about the groups. This is kind of telling you in those groups by signage. And these are all on things that are on the road.
And if you do want to geek out, I have some extras I picked up yesterday, and I have extras, and I gave some extras to the Los Altos lead CERT volunteer, Harry Guy. So between us, you can get a copy. And I have to share a sad story about geeking out. That I've been to my hazmat class, and I got my book, and I was so excited, and my kids were younger, and we do this drive at Thanksgiving down to LA, and the kids always say, "Mom, what's in that truck?" And how do I know? I said, well, let me get out my book. That's carrying. And I could look up the number and tell them. So we had a geeky trip to Thanksgiving that year.
Yeah, and typically it's gas and diesel. That's the most common ones that you have. This isn't more for if you happen to be in Palo Alto or Cupertino. This will be the end of the hazmat. But again, look in your local area. You can always go to the county. They have a drop-off site. Again, under COVID, you just need to call up or get on the website and find out, you know, how it is that they do that. Cupertino residents, they actually have a curbside drop-off that they'll come and do a pickup. I think also in Palo Alto. So check with your local town. This was just a couple of them that we had that had a little bit different way, but the county always has a way to get rid of hazardous paint. And that includes paints. You know, anything that, you know is toxic should be not put in the garbage. It should be handled through a hazardous waste. And again, reducing the volume, how you store it, how the integrity of the container is, make sure that it's not failing. That's all I have for this portion. I'm going to go back and look at the questions and make sure that I've answered those, or if I'll let me peek at them, and then we'll have Ann move to slide 11, and we'll do question and answers if you have more, and then I'll show you a little bit about wildland fire if you want to find out a little bit about that, but I want to go through and do the questions. So Fred, I hope I answered that carbon monoxide, it doesn't matter if it's high or low, because it mixes readily with air. So it can be down low, plugged into the wall, or mounted low, or mounted high, or in combination with a smoke alarm. So that would be high if it's in combination. Kitchen, I see you saw it was a K. Your kitchen extinguisher will be a combination generally of a BC extinguisher. And we'll look at our extinguishers when we get done with the questions. I've got mine here. And then let's see, what about a normal kitchen fire? Normal house fire will generally, it depends, it will generally be cooking, so generally grease, but that's why you have the B, which is the oils that can take care of that. So that's why it's usually a BC extinguisher for the kitchen. I have mine here, and mine's a BC. A lot of the ones in commercial occupancies will be an ABC, and it'll say like 10 2BC or something. And that just tells you the volume. You'll notice that the container gets bigger. The bigger that 10 is, it's more fire that it can put out. Okay, let me look in the other question area. Make sure I'm catching all of these. Let's see. Dun, 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 dun. Yes, you should always make sure there's an exit between you and the fire, like they explained in the video. That's one of that 2 ways out. Always make sure that you're paying attention to that exit so you don't, you don't get confused and not know how to get out. Let's see. Oh, if they won't take, I have someone saying that they tried to take paint. The other thing you can do with paint is open the can and let it dry. And then once it's dry, it's no longer a hazmat, and you can peel it out of the can and you can throw it out, and then you can throw the can out. So if you can
also add on paint, check on the website, but pretty much all the Kelly Moore locations are paint recycling. If it's house paint, as long as it's in its original container, they'll take it. They wouldn't take my spot auto paint, but all the leftover paint from house painting projects I cleared out of my garage and took to Kelly Moore, and it was easy peasy, drop it at the counter.
And thank you, Maury. Maury said that too, that the Kelly Moore would take a few cans at a time. So you just don't want to pack a whole bunch of them or call them ahead of time and see what the limit is. Because, if you're going to load up your whole back of your pickup truck with old paint cans, they may not take all of them in one trip.
And the first time I called them, they had just filled up their barrels, and they said, gosh, we have to wait for our barrels to be picked up. Bring it after Friday when they do that. Okay, and I did. No problem.
So, and I'll tell you, as the fire department, we regulate that when we look at their inspections. They can only have a certain volume on site of a hazardous material in a commercial occupancy. As we saw on those signs back at the NFPA 704, the colored 3-4 signs, that's part of what that's monitoring. So where they have that paint can, that's a hazmat for us. So we need to know. So we limit the volume to 55-gallon drums. So that's why that's exactly what Ann's explaining. So I think, unless there's new questions, I think we've gotten all the questions so far. If anybody has any questions about anything that I've represented in these slides so far, I was going to talk really quick because wildland's been, since we had such a close fire with the CZU fire, I was going to just go a little bit over wildland for people that are in Los Altos Hills. And it's Los Altos isn't that far away from Los Altos Hills, so it's a risk anywhere where fire can catch anything on fire. It doesn't respect boundaries. It doesn't stop at a city line and say, oh gee, this is Los Altos now, not Los Altos Hills, I can't burn this. It doesn't respect that. And the embers can actually move a half mile to a mile ahead of a fire. So anyhow, it can affect other people. So the biggest risk of your house catching on fire is your neighbor's house catching on fire. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen. So really quick, I'll go over a couple slides on wildland fires just to kind of give a full circle on this. These are the main things that influence, and you can see why the vegetation and the moisture in it and the health of it. We talked about fuel. The drier it is, if it's dead already, that's the health. It's going to be a ready source of ignition if it finds a heat source. Because remember that triangle, it already has the oxygen. If it's dry, it's a receptive fuel. Now we add some heat and we have fire. What also affects it is wind. Wind-driven fires, they have lots of oxygen and the wind's pushing them along, and it's sending embers or little firebrands up in the air. And you've seen that on when you have a little nice campfire. Those little things can travel up in the air. That's the same thing that happens in a wildland fire, but usually with a pushing wind. And also the slope of the terrain. So that's why wildland urban interface, usually those areas are depicted as Los Altos Hills, Oakland Hills. We'll see a video about that. When you have slope, the fire actually bends and preheats the grass in front of it, so it's able to catch faster as it goes up the hill. So it actually speeds up the rate of spread, or how fast the fire is spreading, when you have hill or slope terrain. And then how much of it is available. So that's why we tell people, we have to lessen the fuel load. We have to break that up. If you cut the grass short, it might burn along, very slowly, but it's not going to have the big flame lengths that 3-foot tall grass is going to have. Little stubby grass is going to maybe just smolder along with a really short flame length and be really easy to extinguish. So keeping the roadways clear, when we talked about the 2 ways out, again, super important. If you're visiting people up in hills anywhere, make sure you pay attention to a map as you're driving in. Is there a second way out? I have a house up in the mountains. There's really only one way out. The second way out is really, really obscure. So make sure you know that obscure second route, you know, and then assume that you're not going to have your GPS. So really kind of have a good sense of where you're going when you're going in an area that you've never been in. Again, first responders are going to need to be going in. So if you get an evacuation warning, try to leave as soon as possible. We want to get the roads as open as possible so that they can come in and we're not trying to leave out. And then just in evacuations, there's kind of 2 types of things. There's a warning and then an order. You don't actually have to leave your home. We always recommend to leave your home. It's not worth staying and fighting the fire. The fires can get out of control. So early evacuation, signing up for alerts, that's always the recommendation. In a warning, that's saying that you should get ready and get going now. If it's an order, say you have a relative that lives up in an area like Los Altos Hills that can't drive themselves, if there is an order in place, you will not be able to drive up and get them. So it's really important when people have access and functional needs or mobility issues to make sure that they have a secondary backup plan that's in the area that can bring them down, because they will not let people in. The sheriff or somebody will have to go up and get them once there's an order in place, an evacuation order. And we actually got some warnings out of the CZU fire up on the skyline and the higher elevation people up Page Mill and Los Trancos. They actually got some sort of warning, not evacuation, kind of a warning to a warning. They just kind of said that there's a possibility of evacuation. So a lot of people that were with mobility or access and functional needs did leave early. We had one of our CERTs that packed up her elderly, the neighbors that live near, and they moved down and went to some friends' houses in this last fire. So it's always really important to make sure that we have pets planned for, that we have our family planned for, and especially, again, people that have special needs. Next slide. So this is actually Ann's going to put on a YouTube video. This is the Oakland Hills fire. A bit dated, but absolutely still relevant. It's still exactly what, you know, what happens in fires. So notice what people are wearing, what they're doing, where the fire's going. Again, a bit dated. This guy is an off-duty firefighter. I think he's got black backdraft on the back of his t-shirt. So really kind of interesting, but take a look. It's 1991.
Leave your cars and walk. All right? Apartments right on 24th.
Scenes of pure terror in the Oakland-Berkeley Hills. This location near the Caldecott Tunnel was one of the first hit by the fire. The fierce flames here had people running for their lives through an inferno of intense heat and smoke.
My God, I've never seen anything like this! We're trapped.
Firefighters worked frantically to try and stop the unstoppable. Within minutes, it destroyed an entire 400-unit apartment complex, leaving 1,000 people suddenly homeless, many left with nothing but the clothes they were wearing.
Cars have been coming out. Get off the street.
Some of the residents tried to escape in their cars, surrounded by fire, smoke, and panic.
people to just get out of their car. Come on!
For homeowners, it was a living hell. The fire engulfed canyons and ridges, jumped roads, and swallowed up entire neighborhoods. Transformers exploded, leaving thousands without power. And 5 years of hard drought made conditions here especially volatile, and the strong wind made matters even worse. Some people tried desperately to spray down their homes with hoses. Then, inescapably, came the moment of no return. Thousands of people had to leave, even if it meant leaving behind a lifetime of possessions and personal treasures. Street by street, they evacuated homes that were all too quickly turning into ovens of fire.
We have to evacuate the area and move to an open technical hospital. The fire is really bad in this direction.
In an instant, multi-million-dollar estates rage into balls of fire. And still, it burned on, leaving a path of total destruction, the worst fire ever in the history of California.
Get the point. Very cool. And again, obviously, that worst fire in California history is not the case anymore. We had a comment too from the Kearneys are on here. Terry's actually one of our commissioners, Terry Kearney, and one of our commissioners, Melvin Vaughn, actually was fighting fire. He was a battalion chief retired from Milpitas, and he actually was at this tunnel fire in Oakland Hills. So I have one more slide on this. Just going to kind of show people that happened to, we'll see if we can get back on because it's kind of thinking about this other, there it is. Let's skip to the next one. That's another version of that. So again, this is just kind of talking a little bit about what we can do around our homes if you live in a wildland. And even if you don't, that remove needles, that number 2 bullet point, remove needles, leaves, and leaves from roofs, eaves, gutters. When I talked about, and this next one with the limbs, all of these bottom ones, if you don't have that large clearance of 100 feet around your property because you live in town, all these other bullet points are absolutely applicable to everybody in Los Altos. This is things that you should do. Why do you want a 4-inch reflective house number on your house? Well, 70% of the calls for the fire department are medical calls. We want to be able to find your house. If that nice little juniper is grown over your address that was on your garage and I can't find that, it's going to take us that much longer to get to your house. Again, if you're going to replace a roof, consider doing a non-combustible material if you have a wood shingle roof. Removing the needles and leaves from the roof, that may have to be done a couple of times in the year when we have these windy days and the trees kind of get cleared out of their leaves and their debris and it all lands on the roof and then down into the gutters. That's where we can have an ember in a late fire. If we had the Paradise fire started on November 4th, so that was a pretty late fire. Again, we can get those really weird hot days still, and our vegetation is all dry. Even though we've had a little bit of rain now, it doesn't take much for it to dry out. We haven't gotten the big soaks yet, so we still have to make sure we keep that stuff clean. All right, so we're at 8:30 almost. I just wanted to, if Ann wants to put it back, I'll put my video back on and I'll show you the fog manual. And if you happen to have the fog manual, it could be a different version. It's the California, if you happen to have this guy, let me turn it the right way. If you happen to have one of these fog manuals, that's what it looks like on the back, sort of. This was made by County Fire. If you've gone through a refresher or a CERT in the last few years, you might have one. But if you go on page 24 is the fire suppression unit, and it goes all the way to page 33. And it has a lot of the things that we've talked about today. And it's a good review, something that you can look at. The PASS acronym is in there. Again, all the types of things that we've already talked about today. The types of fire extinguishers, that's in there. So even though I can get you the PowerPoint, all the stuff is pretty much in here that we've talked about tonight. And then I just want to remind you, the last thing we always do, because I got to do the safety, your safety is important first. But remember the CERT size up, gather the facts, assess and communicate the damage, consider the possibilities, assess your own situation, establish your priorities, make decisions, develop a plan of action, take action, and evaluate the progress. And remember, even though there's 9 steps, if you're at number 3, considering possibilities, and you need to go gather more facts at number 1 again, that's okay. This is a circular, all the time fire size up that's going on. So it's kind of an all the time thing. And that's on page 24. It's on other pages in the book because it's so important to constantly be evaluating your environment, your situational awareness, what's going on. And then, oh, here's my fire extinguisher. It's a really, I know, really little teeny stupid one, but see, it talks about the different types of fire. Whoops. And BC, it's a stupid little guy, but you know, it talks about it. So if you have a fire extinguisher home, some of them will have a valve that has the dial on it, and it should be the pressure. That's for the pressure in the extinguisher, and it should be, oh, Ann, let's look at Ann's. Ann's got a nice one. So look at, see your dials in the green there? That's good. That means it's pressure. And can you show us the label where it says what type of extinguisher it is? Roll it to the other side. So right there is the type of extinguisher. And then it's actually kind of giving the PASS acronym sort of there. You know, it's not exactly the same, but it's pretty close. And she has the squeeze. She would pull the pin. So the pin is right there. If you want to show them, Ann, just point to it. But it's got a little lock on it. Mm-hmm. And then she would aim the hose. So that hose that's on the side, she would aim that. And then she would squeeze that trigger.
I feel like an airline stewardess, but this is too hard.
I know, right? Put your mask on before your child's. No. And then she would squeeze and sweep. So she had a perfect one to show. Anyhow, that's all I have. Let's see if we have any more questions.
I'm being unsupervised at the hardware store. I keep home with a good one.
See? Dispose of old expired ones. It's a hazmat. So check with the hazmat, hazardous material, like put through the county. It is a hazmat. Ones like Ann can be recharged. So there's certain kinds that can be recharged, and you can just go in, you can go into the yellow or the internet, yellow page, whatever, do a Google search. Fire extinguishers companies, it's just price, you know, that's the comparison. They all do the same type of thing. One of the monthly maintenance things too is if you have a nice one like Ann, tip it upside down once a month, because it does have powder in it. And it gets compacted, and it's going to come out more completely if it's loose. So if you do that, and the powder, it's not good for you, but it's not going to kill you. It's basically baking soda. So that you saw that all that dust when Jeff was doing that one on the demo. If it happens to go off in your car because you have one in your car and it happens to roll around and spray around, yeah, it's going to be a huge mess. It's going to irritate. It's an irritant. But it's not like it's carcinogenic and super bad. It's pretty much just baking powder type stuff, or baking soda type stuff.
Kind of ironic that the baking soda is considered a hazmat, but never mind.
Yeah. Well, it's just because it's a pressurized container. It's the vessel. It's not the insides. Yeah. So what basically happens when they expire, they're probably still good. It's when you don't have the green arrow because you lost the pressure. So that's what the main thing is. It just won't, it like a can of spray, like your cooking spray, it still has stuff in it, but it won't come out or paint. Anyhow. Okay, see, the Kearneys are well prepared. They've got quite a few, and they have them in the garage. Again, having them in the kitchen and the garage, the places are most likely to have ignition sources. Sometimes barbecue area, at least know where it is so that you can go get it. So, that's all I have. Unless there's more questions, I think we've hit them all.
And you know, you touched on it a little bit earlier, but just to emphasize from our CERT training, remember, don't be a victim. You know,
Your
so
safety.
you're always looking at your safety, scene safety, the safety of people around you. So we talk about the fire the size of a trash can, and Denise said, hey, if that feels like too much, back off. And remember, your safety is first. You are not replaceable. you can find another house.
I can tell, yeah, a really sad story. One of our firefighters, his dad died in a fire. He came out, got the mom out, went back in, got disoriented and died in the fire because of the gases. And that's a dad of a firefighter. Not that that makes him an expert, but it's that don't go back in. Once you exit, stay out. If you've decided it was bad enough to leave, stay out.
Yeah. So we're really glad everybody called in today. We had about a little over 14 people attending today. We recorded this, and I'm sorry I forgot to record the first bit. We have a presentation. I'm gonna get it figured out. We're gonna get it posted so that people have been asking, hey, can I share it with my neighbors? Can I share it with the bat? Yes, absolutely. We're gonna, our colleague Victoria is off figuring out how to create a little YouTube channel for us. So we could have a whole series of bad videos where Ann forgot to record the first series of slides available to people, and we'll put that out to our respective channels as we go along. You hopefully have, you found our thing today, so we have a series. You can go to losaltosca.gov/ and I forgot what's like CERT Emergency Education, but if you go to /CERT, on that page, it's a little bit hidden. There's a line that says, hey, we're doing a series of CERT webinar refresher classes. So you can find the upcoming ones. We have a whole series of these. County Fire is working on developing a series of refresher classes as well, and we're sort of piloting, and we hope to be bringing more to you. And of course, we have ongoing www.losaltosca.gov/prepares, and we have webinars. Either we're doing them or I found other people's on a whole bunch of topics, including COVID-19. Denise and I posted our slides from the spring when Denise kindly taught the, what do we call it? Preparedness refresher or something like, no.
Yeah.
Preparedness checkup.
Yeah.
And various other slides. So you're invited to go there. We post them there. People want to share them with your neighbors. We love it if you share with your neighbors, and we'll be glad to have folks learn.
Ann's got some really good, Anna Victoria has some really good topics coming up. This one wasn't as fun as it could be, because we didn't get to play with real fire. So again, hopefully we can do that some point in the future, because that was the original plan when we planned on doing these. But unfortunately, we had to do a little pivoting. So thank you again for spending the evening with us, and sign up for more of these, because the more you sign up, the more we'll make. So we'll be back for more. So your attendance makes us keep doing this. So tell a friend, bring a friend, give them the link, because again, it doesn't have to be a CERT person. It can be anybody. It just, we focus on the CERT people, so that you
and
can
for
get.
Los Altos, I'm saying CERT because you've taken the extra classes, you've registered, there should be a little extra value. So this is a little extra value. Los Altos Hills is going out with their nets, and they're capturing people wherever they can and trying to convert them into CERT. So you have a couple things. We also have invited CERT programs across the county, and they're very welcome to invite their CERT. So I remember I saw at least one person who had signed up from Mountain View, so we appreciate you joining as well. So folks, we'll wrap it up for tonight. Thank you for your questions. Thanks for participating, and we look forward to having you at future sessions. And most of all, thank you very much to retired Captain Gluhan for teaching tonight. We're lucky to have your expertise. Coming up, Victoria, who's with ambulance services, we're gonna have her medical expertise. Plus she's hooked in a couple of other outside presenters that we know are very knowledgeable to bring you additional voices and additional experts. So thanks everybody, and good night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.